stay together.
Okay now, husband. Okay.
Oh, loving you weather.
Hey now, come on.
That's it. That's all. That's all.
It's all right
With
with me. But I think like your relationship is worth it. Your relationship is so worth it. And so while we did talk about the D word, I think that's the reality that a lot of folks are facing. And if that is not you, I want you to take your money so seriously. Welcome. This is For Better and Worth.
The podcast where we don't believe you have to sacrifice your relationship while you grow and build your net worth.
We are your hosts.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Ericka Young. And we're so glad you're joining us today.
All right, y'all. Let's get into it.
Hey, babe. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm good. It is amazing what 8 hours of sleep will do. Oh, my goodness.
It's funny how we talk about a lot of sleep-related things. And, I guess personal care, because life gets hectic and people don't take care of themselves the way they need to. So
Yeah, but this weekend, we took a bike ride that wiped us out. Okay.
But
And
that was on the heels of like a very busy day before that.
right. But I was
go back
feeling
to-
real old though. Okay.
Well, I go back to I had 24,000 steps like the day before, and then we got up early. It was like, let's go ride, 10, 12 miles. And
In the heat.
yeah, the heat
After
is
staying
something
up till
else.
midnight, which you know what, I can't do that much. Like
Yeah.
that's a rarity, okay?
You know,
And this was the very next day. So, and we ain't the 25-year-olds that used to be able to jump up and do whatever and not even think about how it affects their body.
yeah. Well, I would talk a bunch of smack, but I was down for the count myself. So
We took naps. I don't take naps. I envy people who take naps. And I literally was like, all right, I could feel myself getting tired in the afternoon and I'm going to take a nap. And I took an hour nap and it was glorious.
I went into it knowing I was gonna take a nap.
You did. And you took a long one.
Yeah.
And we slept 8 hours at night. Like that was amazing. Literally, I feel like a new person. I'm just saying.
Sleep does the body well.
Especially
So-
when you're of a certain age. Okay.
So people, as you're listening, just know that get the necessary sleep that you require.
Yeah.
Because then I think that gives you the mental acuity to get into all these other things to make good, sound decisions. Because if you don't sleep well and you have brain fog, it can lead into other poor decision making.
That's true. So you know what? That's good because you're listening to this podcast and we want you to get some sleep tonight so that you can go off and do some of the stuff that we're talking about. How about that?
Right.
So what are we talking about today, babe?
Well, I think, there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the world. I saw the floods in Texas, and I sympathize for what people are going through there, and we're praying for those folks that, it's sad to see lives lost, but like there's just a lot going on in the world that can easily get people off track.
Mm-hmm. Fires occurring in California and just life happening.
Yeah, those are big natural things, but I think, like there are layoffs that have taken place at corporations, and we have, people that we know that have been impacted by layoffs, and, divorce seems like that's a constant thing that people go through, and, medical expenses, just a lot of different things that can cause people pretty significant, impact to their lives, their lifestyles. And we just want to encourage people on how to really get back on track.
Yeah. I find that a lot of people tend to abandon their financial acumen, right? The things that they would typically do when life starts getting topsy-turvy. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, well, I can't budget right now because either we don't have enough or I just don't have time or that's not the most important thing right now. And the challenge with doing that is that this will begin to spiral into this bigger monster that it didn't have to be.
Yeah.
And so that is what we're talking about, is just how to get back on track.
I think it's easy to begin to spiral because if people feel pressure and they feel like they have to respond, I think sometimes people aren't aware that their response could be like a less logical response. I don't want to say irrational, but it could be less logical.
Very emotional is
Yeah.
how I would
Yes.
describe it,
That's a good way. Emotional is a good way to
because a
describe
lot of
it.
folks in the heat of, let's say, medical challenges, right? They don't have time necessarily to cook, but we got to eat. And so then you spend obscene amounts of money on dining
Dining
out, for
out. Yep.
instance. And if it's going on a credit card or whatever, like that begins to take a toll. Or if there's job loss and there's a lot of stress and pressure. And so some people just don't want to look at the money in that regard, and maybe bills aren't getting paid, right? And of course that begins to spiral, and of course in the event of a divorce, like that is obviously very challenging, and part of that process is the financial part of it, to be frank. And when you ignore or you hide or you don't calculate numbers, it can be bad for you, maybe even both parties. And so um it doesn't pay, like see no evil. I need you to look at it,
I
okay?
feel like what's interesting is I feel like me personally, if put into some of those situations, I've experienced job loss, and I always feel like I constrict.
What does that mean?
Like in those moments, I'm like, okay, we got to put a freeze on spending, or we like I think of constricting or expanding. Like if
Mm,
you're going into a situation like, well, we're gonna dine out, we're gonna, use credit cards or whatever, I feel like they're expanding.
right, right.
And whereas I feel like I tend to constrict in those moments because I'm like, okay, nope, it's time to batten down the hatches. It's time to tighten the belt. Let's take a look at everything so that we can be aware. And that's where I really would want people to lean more into that direction and say, okay, here is a momentary situation, because I really do like to put life in perspective. Oftentimes when we're going through something, it's not eternity. It's not the rest of your life. It's a fixed period in time. And so I really want people to just kind of pause a bit and say, okay, let's take a snapshot of what is currently going on. And that's why I say constrict, because I feel like, all right, let's take a look at, let's revisit the budget and see what are the necessities and what are things that we can cut out if need be to kind of keep, status quo, to keep life whole. And that's really where I would encourage people to start leaning. Like, don't panic, don't freak out. It's a snapshot. This is a moment in time. And so then find, where you can create balance.
Hmm. I think that's hard for people.
Yeah.
I think so. You're a driver. You are type A personality. Definitely a responsible, like you. I don't know if this is the
Like
real
a first
word.
responder. It's like I
Like
just jump into
you
action.
do. Okay. So you jump into action immediately, and sometimes I'm slower to the draw. Even though I agree with you, I'm
Yeah.
that way as well. Like I want the numbers to all work out before I proceed. However, I think that's challenging for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And one thing that I'll add to what you're saying, because I agree with you 100% that we should sort of hone in on the money a
It's
little
not
bit
an
more.
easy thing to do.
No, here's the thing. There's a couple things that people don't really think about in the moment, and I think it's important to do so. What if you didn't constrict or didn't hone in on the money and start saying no to stuff? What is the potential outcome of, say, doing that or not being really on top of your money? And typically the potential outcome is more debt, more stress later. Like, not paying attention to the money today is going to lead to a negative
Yes.
outcome later. That's the bottom line,
Yes.
period. Not looking at it is not a good thing. But the other part of it is sometimes you just need to focus on one thing. So, for instance, in tightening up the belt, for instance, maybe it's, let's just figure out the one thing that we can do is eat at home. Like that's it. Like I can't
Yes.
focus on nothing else,
Mm-hmm.
but what can I do to eat at home? If I focus on this one thing, that's going to save a bunch of money,
Yeah.
right? Um maybe that isn't your issue. Maybe you already are people who like to eat at home anyway. But maybe the one thing is Amazon, right? Let's disconnect from that world so that we are not spending extra money at Amazon. So I think that just focus on the one thing. And sometimes that one thing might be the hardest thing that you're doing to constrict, to tighten the belt. But if you focus on the one thing, maybe it's easier to do that than to focus on all of the ways in which you can restrict yourself in order to stay on target. And that's sometimes not easy, but I think, if you focus on one thing, it just makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, and I think it depends on what the circumstance is. If it's like a job loss, there's an emotional component to losing a job or having to like seek out new employment. And finding a job is always a job in and of itself, especially if you're transitioning from one thing to another. If you lost something, you may have a severance or something to bridge the gap, but people are oftentimes thinking about how can they find something quickly to potentially double dip, and then that can have a positive impact on your circumstance. But I think it's hard for people to just get beyond the initial loss sometimes, because you can get into a depressive state or stuff like that. And with like medical debt or things like that, I mean, there's something that is prompting and causing that debt. So the focus can be there, on an ailment or a sickness or, some injury that you've incurred. And I just think like, in these moments, in these times, I go back to what I just said. You got to remind yourself that this isn't lifelong.
Yeah.
It's not, eternity. It's not forever.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, okay, I got to just press pause in a sense. And I'd rather people press pause and say, let me just get my footing.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get my bearings about me. Because when you do that, I just think it helps people to just level set. Because, when you're spinning and, you're going out of control, like I think about this example as a kid. We'd be outside playing, and you remember as a kid how you would just turn around in circles
Mm-hmm.
and just spin, 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 and then you would stop, and then everything is still
spinning.
spinning.
The world is still spinning.
Right. That's how it could feel.
Yeah.
When you're in a whirlwind, like you're just spinning, 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 and then if you stop, it may continue to spin for a little while, but you steady yourself. Because I remember as a kid, I would just put my arms out and just kind of steady myself, and then things will start to come back into normal vision and be clear, and I'm not twirling or swirling around. And that's what I think about is like life is spinning out of control, and you have to press pause and like steady yourself.
Yeah, that's good.
And when you steady yourself, it allows your vision, which was once, the world is spinning and spinning, and everything is unclear. You can't make things out. Once you pause yourself and slow down and steady yourself, things begin to come back into alignment and come back into vision. And then you say, okay, this is the way I need to go. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you tried to go that way before, you'd be going in an opposite direction because you were dizzy. And that's just the example I think.
That's good. And I think while you're dizzy, okay, while the world is still spinning or you're in the middle of the crazy moment, and I know this is super practical and is not as, colorful as your example, but if you have medical debt and you're trying to wrap your arms around it, or if you have credit card debt and you don't know what in the world to do, just pay the minimums or pay a little something. So if the minimum on your medical debt is $50 and all you got is 10, pay them 10.
Yeah,
So like,
pay something.
So here, because the longer you wait to pay this stuff, it's going to end up on your credit potentially. Right. And like I said, it's just going to get bigger and more annoying and more frustrating, or affect you in a negative way down the line. And so if you can at minimum pay a little something to everybody, all the creditors, that'd be great. If you can't afford to do that, I think pick up the phone and call them. Pick up the phone and tell them. And because sometimes you can actually get a 90-day reprieve where you don't have to pay them if you explain your situation, right? The one place where when your life is spinning and you may not be able to gain your footing for a while is in divorce. That's the honest truth. It's gonna be a minute,
Yeah.
and two, it requires you to look at the numbers. It requires you to think about the scenarios, and it requires you to communicate. And I hate that. So
It's unfortunate.
we've
Yeah.
never talked about divorce on the podcast. Um, but I honestly think that it is a miss or an area where we would be remiss if we didn't, because people who are listening have experienced this themselves, or they're in the middle of potentially a separation. And here's what we think. This I'm gonna speak for myself. I think you might agree, is that this is probably the single most expensive decision
Yeah.
of your life. And to hide, ignore, to continue to spend is not wise. And I would say get assistance. Get assistance, get counseling, get somebody who can help with the dollars and cents of it all, a mediator, etc. The other thing is, if you figure this piece out, maybe divorce doesn't have to be the eventual outcome. Like I'm not saying that money answers all things, but I am saying that a lot of the times people can't figure out their way through their relationship because of the money. And that's the challenge, which is why we have come here. Not that we have all of the answers, but we do have 27 years almost of marital experience here. And the reason why we have, I think part of the reason why we've lasted this long is because in the very beginning, we said we were not about to let money be the deciding factor in our relationship. Like, we were trying to be on the same page from day one about money. And so if you can potentially solve that challenge in however you need to do that, probably counseling, I think that can save a lot of
But we
relationships.
also said from the beginning that, we were going to work out whatever came up.
Sure.
And I think sometimes people don't have that same commitment. Somebody has checked out, somebody's made a different decision, and there is this disconnection. And so you can't find, commonality when one party is committed and one party is disconnected.
Yeah.
Because then you're on two different agendas and two different missions, and that's when divorce becomes so challenging. If one person wants to work it out and one person doesn't, then it's like, you got competing agendas.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to find resolution when there's competing agendas, there's never going to be real resolution because it requires you to make some compromise.
Yeah.
And in those situations, people typically aren't willing to compromise because then it becomes more about the fight and winning and getting your best part out of it.
That's it. It turns into
Yeah, it's
winning.
all about
How
about
can I
me.
win?
How can I win and get the
Get the
most for
most.
me? Because then you're looking like I'm looking to move forward,
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, divorce is always tough, and I just wish people would find more ways to find resolution
Mm-hmm.
versus dissolution,
Yeah.
you know.
It's tough.
Yeah,
It's
it's
tough.
very tough. It's very tough, and I always empathize when I see people go through that,
Mm-hmm.
because I really just want the best for individuals, and that's why we even do the podcast and talk about it, because we want to lean into the experiences that we've had and share those with others for their benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And look, we get on each other's nerves every day, so don't think that it's
Have I
not.
gotten on your nerves today, babe?
Well, I mean, it's still early,
Oh,
so
wow.
but I know,
Dang.
I get on your nerves
That's
all day, every
hilarious.
day.
I'm trying to
So
think now. Wait. So have you gotten on my nerves today? I'm about to figure it out.
maybe
Yeah,
not.
you repeated something today. It wasn't really getting on my nerves, but you did
Yeah.
repeat something, and I was like, "Yep, I done heard that before."
Yeah, that you got on my nerves at that moment too, because I was like, "Well, let me just say it again.
Oh my
Just
gosh, for
hear
the
it."
12th time. Like, I'm not
Yeah,
trying to hear it 12 times. Once is enough. And if I need a
right.
reminder, that's fine.
Let me say it 2, 3, 4, 5 times.
No, no, no. I'm not
It's
interested.
important to me, obviously,
I-
if I'm
c-
repeating.
and you know what? Sometimes in my head, I'm thinking, just let them talk.
Yeah,
Lord,
let me go.
listen, wait. I'm like, Lord, help me Just let them talk.
Just let me loose.
And then I'd be like, I'm sick of this. I done heard it 12 times.
Let me loose. Let me go. Let me be who I'm going to be.
No, I can't wrangle you in.
Stop trying to put me in a box.
Oh my gosh. No. See, somebody was trying to put baby in the corner. I'm not trying to be in the corner either, okay? So,
but the point that we're really getting at is like, this stuff is tough.
yeah, it is.
It's not easy to always just navigate and find an immediate answer. But I really think that when you can pause and stop, that just always slowing down is always, to me, a good thing to do. Just because cooler heads prevail, like even if you're in an argument, and we don't tend to argue, like, we say we have dust ups.
We do.
But then once we just slow down and, don't just keep jab for jab, because jab for jab is just going to take you
in the wrong direction.
A place you don't want to be. But when we slow down, you're like, okay, you know what? Let's just take a minute, or somebody just intervenes, I'm sorry, I apologize that, I allowed it to, I said what I said. It just turns the tide back where you can find, resolution or work some things out. And so that's where I always try and lean there and err in that direction versus continuing to like, oh, you want to fight? All right, let's go.
Let's get jiggy with it, okay?
That's not how to do it,
And okay, so this one thing I'm gonna say, and then we can move on to how do we get back on track when we've faced some dire circumstances, is that when we're talking about separation, divorce, that challenging situation, it all does come down to money. In the end, it becomes a business transaction. And the challenge with that, of course, is that you are not, remember you said, when you're that child and you're spinning and spinning and the world is spinning and all of that, and can you make rational decisions in that state? It can be very challenging because it's an emotional moment. And so the cautionary tale here is that you might love your partner and everything right now. And of course, you might have dust ups like we do. You might even argue, but you know that you're committed. Just remember to work on your money, because should things not go as you would like them to go in terms of forever with your relationship, it's going to come down to money. So fix the money stuff now. So that's not in the way, right? Like that's not something you can, don't then in the end blame the money when you had an opportunity to work on it. That's all I can say. So,
yeah, so I think that's good. That's good. So just like we talked about all the things that can take you off, there's things that can help get you settled. And I said, take a pause. And I had this image because I thought about when you don't pause. And when I was doing that as a kid, and you started trying to walk, you fell down.
Yep.
And you were going in the wrong direction. And then you had to, stay on the ground on your hands and knees. And then you were trying to get your bearings about you. And that's where you got to really just start to understand what life takes to function, and that you guys know you're going to get a budget out of us.
We're never going to get away from the budget.
Right, never going to get away from the budget, because you got to understand what you need in order to make life go, make life function. And, be it a job loss or whatever, you still got to count the costs.
Yeah.
And know that this is what it's going to take on a monthly basis to survive. Looking for new employment, this is what it's going to take for a new job with new income. If you're approaching retirement age, this is what's going to take to retire. In all three of those scenarios, it's taking in account of what you need in order to live and do the things that you want to do. And then you can start to strategize and adjust your plans around that. But what do you think of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I just redid this for us. And to be very specific about the categories we're talking about, this is food, this is shelter, some medical like prescriptions, the things that you actually need to live and be well, your housing, the roof over your head, utilities, and transportation, right? These are not dining out in terms of food. This
Look,
is
girl,
not.
You forgot something real important in there.
What?
Clothing, because
but most people have enough clothing.
I know, but I think you still gotta
Most people have if
factor in a little
if you
something.
have a job loss, unless we talking about getting you an interview suit, right? If you have a job
You can
loss,
put it on hold.
you can put much of it on
Yeah,
hold.
you can put it on
And
hold.
I only didn't say that because I don't want to give people license to keep behaving their
Right.
way.
True.
I could not behave the way I do with purchasing clothes if one of us didn't have an income. You know what I'm saying? Like I couldn't do. I'm gonna just be
Look, you
honest.
got it from the source.
I'm just saying. So I would have to be cut off, okay?
Right.
But that's
I
the
would be
only
like,
reason.
no, no, no.
Right, exactly. Be taking some stuff back. So anyway, but the basic necessities, not the fun money, not the dining out,
Yeah.
not all
The
of the
things you can
extras.
definitely cut.
Right. So just the basic necessities. And ours went up a little bit since the last time I did it. Because food costs more right now. you know. And and our escrow went up, on our home. So just those kinds of things do affect it. But the point of the matter is that you need to know what it takes to take care of your basic living expenses. And then you mentioned if you have a severance, if you have lost a job, you'll know how long that lasts you.
Yep.
If you have an emergency fund, you'll know how long it could last you while you're looking for a job. And that brings some type of peace of mind.
And I think that gives you some clarity as you're looking for the new job that you don't have to just
Yes,
settle
that's right.
for anything
That's
because
right.
sometimes in those moments people get desperate
Mm-hmm.
and they take jobs that are lesser than their level or
Mm-hmm.
lesser than what they may want just because they're trying to secure something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you have done the things on the front side and been diligent about the emergency fund, you can take the emergency fund, which that would constitute an emergency,
Sure.
and take any severance and tie those together and strategize around both of those because then you can be more strategic in the jobs that you select or what you would choose to take.
And if you don't have a severance, let's be clear, because plenty of times I have worked with folks where I've done this calculation with them and I'm like, here is the difference that you're needing. Let's just say you lost a job or it's been a while or the income changed or what have you, and then these are your basic needs. And it shows you how much you need to go off and look for in a job or a part-time position or in business, how much you need to earn, that kind of stuff. So if the difference between your needs and the income, if you can look at that, then you know how to look for the right position or the right
Yeah.
opportunity. And so that's the thing, is to know that on an annual basis. I just had to tell somebody this. I was like, okay, so this is a $50,000 job that you need. We know what you're looking for in that regard. So when you're filtering through, if it's $30,000, you understand that that's not going to meet all of your
Right,
needs.
right.
So
We had to do this with our own child
we
because
did.
she's looking to make some changes potentially, and
Hmm.
we had to walk through like, well, look, if you take this, this might be a significant lifestyle shift or change if you take a job that pays you less than you currently make, and can you afford to do that, or do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Because then it may mean that you have to look at different types of jobs or different opportunities, but that's a whole nother episode.
But that's a key piece of it. And then the other thing is, we just kind of mentioned it, confirm you have enough income. Like if you don't have
Right.
enough income, then we know where the problem lies. And so that one thing you need to focus on, go get some more income. Even if
Yeah.
it's a part-time position for a season, or even if just whatever you need to do. I think the piece of this is do what you got to do to make it work. And the other part of it is know that this is not forever.
Hmm.
So you might be in this rebuilding
That's why I keep
phase
saying
for a
that.
while, but just know it's not forever.
Yeah, that's why I keep saying that because I think people need to see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, you know, and just having that perspective of that, yeah, this too shall pass, and I feel like, God puts his super on our natural and we can get his supernatural breakthrough. And so you have to just trust that this is, not forever and you're going to keep moving. But I think once you understand all of these things, paying off debt, you may pay the minimums, but that's why we encourage people to get out of debt now before you encounter, life's circumstances. So then you don't have that stress or that pressure because when you're not under pressure, your response, your responses and your response time is totally different because you don't feel the same amount of pressure that someone who hasn't worked to get out of debt or hasn't shifted and built an emergency fund. When they get in these situations, they can feel very differently about, okay, well, yeah, I don't like the situation I'm in, but I don't have any debt. I've saved an emergency fund. And it's a whole different. I remember earlier in our relationship when things would happen, it'd be like, oh my God, this is like a major calamity. If we had a car repair that was $800-900, it was like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? And now, because we've gone from levels to level, it's like when they say the maintenance bill is whatever, it's like, okay, well let's maintain the car on the front side.
Right.
And then if something happens, it's like, all right, well we can handle that, but it's just you respond differently.
Yeah.
And that's where I just really want to see people go from level to level, and that takes preparation. It takes time, and it's not in the moment. If something happens and you haven't done that, sure, you can begin to do it, but the time to do it is not at the point of
desperation.
Yes.
So I want to address one thing is some folks right now might not be current on some stuff.
Yeah.
Like if life has hit you sideways, you're in the middle of some storm, a challenge, a situation that you don't feel comfortable in. A big thing to do is to calculate how much money it's going to take for you to get current. So on any utility bills, on any of your debts, just to get current, not to pay it all off, but what is it going to take to get current? And facing that number is kind of important too, because I actually talked to a young lady recently and I said, and she's Ubering on the side just to kind of make some extra money. I said, guess what? If you do this for this amount of time, you're current on everything. And then if you keep doing it, if she does this for a year, she can pay her car off. So not only can she get current, but in less than a year, she can get current plus pay her car off. And she's a young person. She doesn't have a family, no kids, nothing. So she from our conversation has the energy to go off and do that and to really change the way her situation looks. Now, she wouldn't be fully out of debt, but that will change her situation by a good $1,000 a month. And so when you think about a young person whose life is changed by $1,000 a month in a year, that's amazing. So, and that was, we weren't behind on bills, but our debts totaled $1,000 a month. And so when we're looking at our minimum payments and all the things, our number right now could have been increased by a whole $1,000 if we still had that same debt. So that's important.
I think it's cool to have those quick earning opportunities like Uber and DoorDash, like just how times have advanced and you've got these quick income earning opportunities where it's not like a finite thing that you have to do forever, and it's just go do it for a season and make money, like make a couple $100, $200, $300, $400 a week doing something extra and some extra time that you have that can impact your income. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
DoorDash or whatever it is, because we know a young man that he was like, he moved to a area where DoorDash was real popular, and he's like, boom, he's DoorDashing, like making some good money just delivering food, and it's for a season.
Yeah.
But it's like, boom, I'm gonna make this money right now because it's pretty easy to do. Go pick it up, drop it off. Go pick it up, drop it off. And you got wear and tear on your car and things like that, and you may not want to do that forever, but in a season where you just need to generate some income, I mean, there's things to do out there.
Yeah, it's about how bad do you want it? How bad do you want to see the change, the freedom, that next level? Like, what are you willing to do in order to make that happen? That's the bottom line.
And as you do this, continue to find ways to celebrate along the way, to acknowledge the progress that you're making. Don't go out and try and always reward yourself and spend more money.
No.
Maybe just say, I'm going to go and sit and buy myself a coffee and just celebrate that I was here and now I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
I've made progress. And it goes back to our progress over perfection, because the road might not be perfect that you're traveling on, but as long as you're continuing to make progress, that's the important thing.
Yeah.
So
So what's your make it worth it, babe?
Well, I think you know what mine is. When life is swirling out of control, take a moment and pause and stop and allow yourself to settle. Because I think that's my make it worth it, because I just feel like when you settle and your vision becomes clear, you can make such better decisions versus when life is swirling and you feel like you're out of control and you're swirling with life. If you're trying to make decisions in that moment, I just don't think you're going to make the best or the right decision unless you find a way to settle yourself and allow, life to come back into focus. Then you can make a good decision.
That's
So,
good.
what about you? What is your make it worth it?
My make it worth it is probably handle these life events, these changes, these curveballs, things that happen from left field as if your life depends on it. Like it, because it does. It does. I think you need to be willing to do the work, even if it's just that one step that's going to make a radical change. Because the thing is ultimately, it would be lovely for our listeners to stay together. We don't want them to have divorce, but I want you
Let's
say it.
stay together.
Okay, now, husband. Okay.
Oh, loving you weather.
Hey, now, come on.
That's it. That's all. That's all.
It's all right with me. But I think like your relationship is worth it. Your relationship is so worth it. And so while we did talk about the D word, I think that's the reality that a lot of folks are facing. And if that is not you, I want you to take your money so seriously so that it doesn't have to be you. And we've gotten through some financial things in our relationship because we committed. And that is not easy. So I just think your life, your relationship, all of it is and your future, frankly, is dependent on you plugging in where you can, even when life gives you a curveball. So that's my make it worth it.
That was good. It was a good conversation.
Yeah.
Keep pressing like, subscribe, come back, listen, and let us know what you want to hear. And we will see you guys next time. And until then,
we're out.
Thank you for spending some of your time with us today.
We appreciate all of your support. So be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to this podcast.
You can find us on Instagram at For Better and Worth.
And sign up to receive our free guide, The 7 Reasons Your Money Relationship Isn't Working with Your Partner, on ForBetterAndWorth.com.
Until next time, we're out of here.